After its release in November 2022, ChatGPT rapidly reached 1 million users in only 5 days and 100 million users in less than 2 months. Similar to how smartphones transform the way we communicate, generative AI may have a similar impact. And it is creating new opportunities for the insurance industry as well. New opportunities across the entire value chain. In this panel, Emanuele Colonella, Innovation Leader at Generali, and his guests will guide us on a tour along examples from back and front offices to reveal the power of generative AI to transform insurance.
So welcome everyone. My name is I'm Innovation Lead at Generali, and today we are here to talk about generative AI. It's the hottest of the hottest topics right now. It's on everyone's agenda. Is inundating our news feeds. Even my 70 years old dad has used it. So today we are trying to unravel a bit, what it really is, what are the most interesting applications and use cases for our industry. Luckily for you, it's not just me talking, but we got a panel of experts. And what I like about this panel is it brings together a lot of different perspectives. So Samir Medzur is a Chief Venturing Officer at HITS. Is an accelerator, so the perspective of innovation in a corporate environment. David Zuteller from SCORE, a big player in the insurance space. Israel Olaya.
Thank you.
Good. So he's from Google. You are Cloud Engineer Manager, right?
Yep.
Good. So obviously a big player on the supply side. And finally, Pranay Jain, right, from Enterprise Bot, is a startup who's been active in this space for quite a few years on the human-machine interaction. Right? So first things first, let's try understand a bit definitions. What is this topic? So what is generative AI, and how does it stand compared to artificial intelligence? I don't know, Pranay, do you maybe want to give us a bit of the definition there?
Sure. So I think, artificial intelligence has been a very interesting topic for 5 years now, right? Like we've been talking about AI really very aggressively for 5-6 years now. But what's really interesting, right, is actually when I went to a client, we work with insurance companies, financial services, etc. And normally a project will take 3, 6, 8 months even for a pilot. And we recently went, and within the 1-hour session that we had, we actually built something. And the client actually responded that, till now, artificial intelligence really felt more artificial than intelligent. Finally, I feel the intelligence coming out. And that's really where we are, where, the AI before, right, it was like classical music. It had a score. As long as it, you followed the exact score, it was beautiful. But as soon as you gave it something different, it would break. With generative AI, it's like jazz. You have a base, you have a model that's learned something, but it actually creates, you're actually creating music, you're creating a completely different note as you play along. And that's what generative AI can do. Use the learning, but actually extrapolate it and do more with it than just what that data actually showed in the past.
So should we say AI supports with decision making, and generative AI is all about generating new content from existing knowledge, right?
Exactly. So one, it can generate, but again, especially in a, enterprise setting, you need to also control how much it generates. So you have all these abilities to make sure that, yes, it generates, but how do you control what it generates? For example, you saw the slide before this, you technically had images, but they were not necessarily the right ones. I remember, when ChatGPT came out, I actually asked it, okay, who is Pranay Jain? And it said I went to Harvard and I worked at Google. None of these are true before Google sues me. But, that is exactly what you need to control. And generative AI, basically, when you do it the right way, yes, it generates, but you can control what it generates. And the beauty is it really adds the intelligence, which it can go beyond just the training data set that you provided.
So the $1 million question, right? So is this another metaverse? Is this just the latest hype? Or is there actually some substance behind it, right? So Google obviously, is a leading player in the space. Is this going to change our societies, how they say, or is it just the latest fad?
Yeah, I think generative AI for me has been a great leap, a great change. First, because it has dragged a lot of attention to AI that actually was something more for academia or very specific narrow solutions. And today we are here talking about generative AI, and that's a big change. It started with attention is all you need. It's a paper where it was first described how to use transformers as an attention to generate something new and get creativity. So this is the reason I think it is not hype, so it is here to stay and to improve the way we work with the tools we use every day. I see three main shifts or three main changes that will happen in the future. One is around conversations, and I agree, conversations are going to change. How we chat with chatbots are going to be far better than they were in the past and than they are today even. Second shift for me will be productivity. The productivity will be around people that works every day with the computer as we do, Word and mail, etc. And the second productivity shift will come with developers. They will be more productive as they are today with tools like Cody or Copilot or a lot of them. And the third change for me comes from open source. I mean, open source has been key and has demonstrated to have a lot of attraction. When open source has all the attention, there has been a lot of new models coming, and those models bring a lot of innovation, and this innovation will be key to bring the new innovation for the future. So this is the reason I think it won't be hype, but it will be here to stay.
So you mentioned something there about open source. Clearly, we see, ChatGPT, OpenAI, all the big models, but then there is also a world of more smaller models which can run on cheap machines. Can you maybe help us understand a bit more, that world? There's not just the big LLMs, but there is also a world of smaller niche.
Yeah, I think there's two big shifts here now, huge LLMs, where we are building Gemini or the next version of GPT or Lambda or whatever. Those are huge, super expensive to train, super expensive to do experiments with them, and there are a big trend, and it's something super interesting. But on the other side, we got the smaller open source models that are super interesting to pay attention and to find if they can cover or solve narrow solutions better than the bigger ones. So it's a very interesting place to take a look at that.
Big ones, jack of all trades, master of none, and then some niche, tailored, very effective and cheap on specific.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Interesting. So let's now try and translate that for the insurance world. So what does it mean, right? Taking all of that, the opportunities, we said it's not hype, it's here to stay. But what does it mean for the insurance world? Sam, you work a lot with corporate innovation, with startups, and taking those advanced technologies, bringing them into the corporate world. So what are the most interesting things, areas of opportunities that you have seen so far?
So in terms of opportunities, there's loads of opportunities out there, and it's too early to say, okay, which one brings the most value, because as you know, the technology, we're talking about large language models. So LLMs came in November 2022. So all the insurers are exploring, trying to find out, okay, which use case, makes sense. For our case, well, we're working together with enterprise bots. So when I say we, it's part of Generali working, on a use case that we define as the lowest hanging fruit. What does that mean? It's basically working on external data, public data, i.e. the Generali website. So everyone can access the Generali website, and what we've done is index all the web pages so that when the customer, so we have a chatbot then, a ChatGPT enhanced chatbot, whenever the customer is searching for something, let's say the traditional way on a web page, and spends minutes and minutes to find maybe what he or she wants, well, now he can have a conversation with the bot and ask something like, my firstborn baby girl just is a few weeks old. Does she need a health insurance. Shall I get her a health insurance? And then the bot would tell you, well, according to Swiss law, you would need to have it, and you have to have it within 3 months, and so on and so forth. So within seconds, you get the answer. And by doing that, actually, you could have a second bot that provide insights to distribution, where the bot can tell the distribution agent, well, today I had 35 interactions with different people that mentioned that they are expanding their family. Maybe it would be a great idea to offer them, okay, a life insurance to protect their family. So these kind of use cases we are experimenting with. And I think it's the start of the journey.
Can we generalize by saying wherever there is human-machine interactions and you want to make that interaction more natural, that's where these large language models can really help you and accelerate? Does it make sense? Human-machine interactions, is that the area?
I think they're not. So, and we're saying...
yeah, human-machine interaction, making that smoother, more empathic, more engaging. Is that the low-hanging fruit, the area to look first?
We absolutely believe that that kind of a human machine is augmenting the human. So in the future, we will have different people. So those who did not interact with the machine today, and those who are actually are augmented, their skills are augmented. So my personal, let's say, takeaway for you is start playing with those LLMs today. Get acquainted with it, because it's really a fascinating journey.
If I could just add one thing to what he mentioned in terms of human-machine interaction, right? One of the things, right, real numbers now. So we went live recently with an enterprise in 13 days from signing of contract to actually going live with something to their customers. And these bots actually had 40% higher acceptance and NPS compared to everything in the past. And again, the biggest reason is, right, when you're talking to these, like, why was ChatGPT so fundamentally different? Why was it that it got 100 million users in the shortest amount of time? It really felt like a real interaction. Like, before this, 1 year ago, if I came to the same audience and I said, asked people, how many of you enjoyed chatting with a bot? I would be lucky if I got one hand up today, right? And that's what generative AI does. It really puts that layer of human on top of the intelligence, which really makes that human-machine interaction very, very easy and fundamentally different compared to before.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's work our way down or up the value chain, depending on which way you start from. But reinsurance, what are the more specific applications you see in your space, David?
Yeah. I mean, from a reinsurance perspective, obviously the first view is more from a risk assessment perspective. So I think that's the nature. I think internally, where we look at this is, I mean, it's hard to say. It's more a commodity. So we kind of assume it's a commodity. We have open AI. It will come. So the key source for us is really working on the underlying data sources and making sure that we find the use cases. So in terms of use cases, I think from an efficiency and accuracy perspective, you can think about a claims assessor. So the way we look at it is more from an augmented, say, underwriting or augmented claims elements. So actually, the moment you get all those kind of big claims files, the key element for us is kind of to be quick. I'm giving you an example in terms of, for example, disability claims, real life examples. You get hundreds of files. The claims assessor can probably do 2-3 files a day. But if you have AI kind of supporting you in terms of reading the unstructured data, guiding you to where you should look at from a risk assessment perspective, you can kind of do a triaging. It makes quite a difference in terms of finding out what are the big cases from a disability perspective where speed is actually essential. Speed essential from a human perspective, obviously. Those are in need for help that we want, but also from a profitability perspective. Those are the cases, if you interact early in the process, I mean, you get people back and rehabilitate. So there's real money and a human aspect. I think that's one aspect of this. And just in terms of what you mentioned around the human machine, I think that's where we see the biggest advantage, right? There's always, you can't just trust the models that are out there. So you need to kind of train the models with your own data. You will learn, you will adjust the data as you go. But there needs to be this human interaction of understanding where are the limitations, where do you go from there. You can't just build the black box and then kind of follow the rules. There's an element of trust, there's an element of accountability as well with the tool that you need to kind of ensure.
Yes, I think we can touch on some of the risks later, but I think you got a couple of really good points there. One is around, so we talked about human-machine interaction, how this technology can make that better. You also talk now about giving humans the ability to process a huge amount of information. That's summarization, comparisons, right? That's enhancing human abilities. That's what I grasped for what you just said. And you also touched on you need to train this data with your own data, right? Yeah. For them to be meaningful, which opens up a set of challenges per se. But before we move on, I don't know, maybe from the supply side, what are some of the interesting use cases you've seen? Is there anything in particular you've seen in the insurance industry or the financial services industry that you feel like is worth mentioning?
Would you like to go first?
You're asking about use cases for insurance industry? Yeah. I mean, the last years have demonstrated that there is a plethora of use cases for AI and insurance companies. What I've seen lately here in Spain is a lot of user interaction, so attending in the front end, assessing risks, taking photos of we were talking about it, taking photos of the issues at home or in the cars. That's a third use case. And understanding the documents that the user are presenting. This is something I've seen lately using generative AI, in that case from Google, in order to find the data inside the document quickly. Last week I was chatting with not an insurance company, but a retailer, in order to use it to translate the comments, to translate the text, to translate everything that the customer was saying, in order to make the translations richer. And in the end, what we are seeing is a lot of more use cases that are defined every day. I think that comes from two trends. One is the experiments are becoming cheaper. I mean, it's far cheaper to make an experiment. We are talking hundreds of euros to make an experiment. That's something that anyone can do, any business user can try it and define an experiment from there. They try the prompt, and from there they see the results, and they can see if it's a good fit. That's one trend. And the second trend is creativity. I mean, the more people that are trying that kind of systems are trying it in different scenarios. The one, for example, describing the photos of an accident, for me was a great idea. I mean, you show it the photo and ask, what are you seeing in that photo? And then you get a good description, and from there you can go on. So these kind of experiments are pretty creative and actually come from people like you trying things every day.
On the AI side, especially the generative AI side, we see a lot on unstructured documents, especially in insurance, right? Like the number of documents that still come in, whether it's via email, whether it's still, basically faxed in, or, basically actually a letter that's being sent, which you need to do OCR on. Again, the amount of documents that insurance companies have and that needs to be processed and moved into the right systems is still a huge pain point, and we still see that's one of the highest volumes. One of the new areas that's actually picked up a lot is knowledge management. Because again, insurance companies have a very large workforce, and knowledge is really distributed in multiple places, and what we're seeing is that all that knowledge is actually getting unlocked with generative AI capabilities. So again, these are two of the, let's say, most common and new use cases that we see. But to be honest, AI, literally, we've seen it across the channel, almost in every process, right from claims to risk assessment, and even as was mentioned, in terms of being able to assess the claim based on photos, etc.
It feels like almost we gave up creating data standards. We are just saying, give us any data, and we'll use clever machines to understand them. So let's now look more, the practical side of things, right? So if you are a corporate, right, how do you get started? What are the things, because the technology is moving at such a pace that it's hard to keep up. So how do you stay on top of things, and how do you drive adoption experiments of these technologies within companies?
So how do you get inspired, or how do you start something?
I think it's inspiring people, but also how to distill the knowledge, make sure it's understood and adopted. What are some, let's call them methodologies or things that you are doing within your own companies? I'm talking here probably on the the demand side, but how do you drive adoption of these technologies within your companies?
Well, I would say, okay, 3 steps. So one is get informed, do stuff, educate. Get informed, do stuff, educate. And but it's a trade-off. So get informed, yes, you can. Every day there's something new happening in generative AI. So it's really hard to keep up. Listening to podcasts, reading articles here. I mean, watching. It's you know how it is. But you cannot do that all day long. So you need to do stuff to walk the talk. So you need to experiment, and like we're doing with enterprise bots, so working with startups, because these guys are really at the front lines experimenting with us, and also talking to partners like big tech, so like the Microsoft of this world, the Googles of this world. So anytime there is something happening, well, we exchange on it, and this is also educating us to educate the employees of then Generali, where we do some raise awareness sessions so that people realize, well, there's a brand new world out there. And getting back to augmentation, we do workshops to get the employees through the problem, solution, value framework. So what are the problems happening in claims? This is, okay, an LLM, how can it help you in finding a solution? Okay, but now what is the value that you can generate out of it? And once we identify the use case, then we come back to square one, which is experiment with that use case, and then get full cycle to read again, inform yourself, and so on and so forth.
So it's the old fail fast thing we heard before, right?
Well, try fast, fail fast, learn fast, repeat.
Yeah, learn fast, right? Innovation 1-to-1, basically.
Yes.
David, what about you?
Test?
Maybe put it up a bit.
Oh,
yeah.
No, I think the key element is kind of you will never be able to read all the elements that are around AI these days, but I think the key for us is kind of not just to build the knowledge within the company, but this applied knowledge. So making sure that we have enough use cases that we kind of test internally. I think the key element for us is kind of that we always get questioned from a strategy perspective, make, buy, or partner. And I think the answer is somewhere in between, because I think you can't just partner, you can't just buy. You need to build up the knowledge, and you build up the knowledge while you go. So you always need a team kind of that is capable of even assessing how to partner, how to buy, how to kind of apply this. And you always need this back testing internally. So I think that's kind of key. Deploy in a controlled environment, I think, is the other element. As we said before, I mean, train your own data set, build on your own data set, make sure that you kind of train your company around both the advantages but also the limitations. I think it might sound crazy, but the moment ChatGPT came out publicly, we stopped, we didn't allow the access in the company, just to avoid any kind of data leakage and kind of to make sure that we train people first to understand how to use it, rather than to kind of clean up the mess afterwards when private data and especially data privacy components can be breached through kind of a ChatGPT platform.
So let me tell you my view of the world. You tell me if it's right or wrong. So there is the world of the copilot, right? Things that Google is doing the same, Microsoft is doing, is white-collar productivity. Staff will see any few weeks or months will be able to do, Microsoft Office 365, write me an email, or play with Excel, or make me a presentation. But that's where everyone will get it sooner or later, as long as the IT department are willing to pay for the licenses. But then there is the world of unexplored, right? Things you can do no one has thought about, right? And that's probably where Google does a bit of that. But also the startups can come into play, right? Trying to explore the unexplored. What is your view on that?
I think you're talking about multimodal models. I mean, right now what we are seeing with big language models is we are training them in order to say what's next. This is what comes from attention is all you need.
I'm talking about the co-pilot, right? The office productivity, everyone will have it. But then there is things that are specific to your company, to your industry. That's probably where people should invest, because if everyone has it, it's not going to be a source of competitive advantage. You need to look for competitive advantage in the area of the unexplored, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I understood you correctly, what you're trying to say is going from, I guess, what's next, which are the next words that you have to say or what you have to do, to discover what's next in a process or what's next in the generation of, or in filling a document or in completing a process? Are you talking about that, or is that what you're looking for? Yeah.
If I may actually take that question, right, if I understand it correctly, which is that if everyone's using it, how exactly can a company be different, and how exactly do providers actually differentiate as well, if I understand it correctly? And I think, as a startup, right, like when we need to compete, one of the things that we need to understand is what's the space that's different, right? Again, I think Google and Microsoft, and there are going to be multiple other models, and like basically you mentioned, it possibly LLMs will become a commodity, right? Where there's a minor difference between the LLM models, but we really believe, as a startup at least, that the biggest space over here is how do you apply this in a company? How do you make sure? So, for example, right, if I can get a quick show of hands, how many people believe that LLMs, or how many companies have banned LLMs because of data privacy as of now, but are looking at how exactly to fix it? Quick show of hands, how many have actually said no for LLMs because of data privacy? Way fewer hands compared to how many conversations I've had, and that's the first question, but that's interesting. Net, right? I think the way we are looking at it is, how do we really allow enterprises to use LLMs in an enterprise-friendly way, in a secure way? And I think that's kind of at least our take of how to be different, and how an enterprise can be different, I think, again, right? See, different companies have different speeds of implementing or testing things out. The companies that use this earlier on are going to get the most benefit, because in 3 years, everyone's going to be using it, as per us.
Please.
If I may just add, I fully agree with you. I think there's an element of first mover advantage, but it's for a limited period, I would say, and then it's getting a commodity. I think the value that we see is really the data set. So once you get your data set right, it's kind of with the regulatory changes, with the ethical, with the boundaries, and actually an element of uniqueness. So you really work on the algorithms. That's, I think, where you can make the difference in terms of, we're here from an insurance perspective. Ultimately, I think what we're trying to achieve is more affordability, more accessibility, and closing the protection gap, right? And in that aspect, I think the data set is key kind of to leverage this.
So we are just about to come to the conclusion, just a couple of 90 seconds left, just going quickly around the room. What is the one thing people should take away from today? Something inspirational, an action point they can action tomorrow when I go back, the after tomorrow, when they go back to their offices? Sam?
So rapidly, we talked about short-term use cases, but I would like, to go in the unknown. And my vision is that actually we will have LLMs everywhere. So Generali will have its own LLM, the road network will have an LLM, the doctor will have an LLM, I will have my own LLM, and they will be able to talk to each other. So coming back to the baby girl that I don't have, it's a fictitious example. So if she wakes up at 3 in the morning and she's coughing, and she's coughing in a weird way, well, I could call the doctor, and the coughing will be talking to the LLM of the doctor, and the doctor would say, this is possibly pseudo-croup, and the message notification will go to Generali, insurance, and it will send me a notification saying, well, you're covered. So all these kind of LLMs will be talking to each other. And this is, for me, how the future is advancing. And everything is happening, 24/7, super smart. And
Thank you.
This is how I see it.
You got 3 seconds.
Sorry.
You got 3 seconds. One thing for
Take away.
Deploy in a controlled environment.
Cool. Thank you.
Be brave, be bold, be responsible.
Be brave, be bold, be responsible. Yeah. Thank you. Pranay.
Focus on the use case, not just the hype. I think it's more important to get the use case right, and LLM is just a way to actually make sure that you can deliver. That would be our thing.
Thank you. You've been a fantastic panel. Thank you so much.